Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining another episode of Thrive Live. I'm going to give it just a second just to make sure that audio is coming through, and it looks like it is. So we're just going to go ahead and start talking. Hopefully you can hear us. If you can't hear us, then we'll re-record it. But anyway, we are happy to have you joining us. I'm James Duncan, Director of Marketing and Engagement for Thrive Mortgage. Joining me today is Randell Gillespie. He is the National Sales Director for Thrive Mortgage, doing a fantastic job in that particular role. I think under your tutelage and leadership, I think that we have managed to grow exponentially over the last couple of years. So I don't have.
We just want to get better. Doesn't matter how big we get. We just want to always be the best.
Absolutely right. Well said. So the reason why I had Randell on today is because I wanted us to have a conversation about just about the kind of questions that prospective homeowners and even existing homeowners really should be asking of their lenders. And so we're gonna kind of get into that and have that conversation. So Randell, why don't you kick us off and talk about what are some of the most important questions people need to be asking?
Would love to. And just so you know, the genesis of this came as a young originator. I was very frustrated. Love helping people. Started out in criminal justice. Did mediation as well for the local city, helping with community disputes. And one of the things that compelled me into mortgage was realizing that the biggest expense and the biggest liability, but the biggest asset anyone could have is a home. And when you look at all the statistics about home ownership and how economically there's so many advantages, then I wanted to be part of that. So it was very compelling to me. So I get in the business, very altruistic, and started dealing with a lot of games. And I have said for some time now, I've been in the business 30 years, and I've said, if we could get rid of the games and have people trust us more, then they could make better decisions. And ultimately there'd be so much more opportunity that there wouldn't be the competition that occurs out there too oftentimes that create the game. So as an example, I remember talking, it was when the light really went off in my head, talking to a borrower, and they told me they were calling around and they told me a rate that someone had quoted them. And it just so happened that I knew that company well, knew that individual. And when they told me the rate that they were quoted, I knew it wasn't real. And that bothered me. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to my father, who had been in sales all his life. And he made a comment. He said, well, people have to choose when you're in a profession like ours, when you're working with the public and you're selling. And I used to look at that negatively, but everything is sold at one point or another. My father said, you either play the game with them, which I would hope you would not do from a character and integrity standpoint, or you have to educate your consumers, your clients ultimately at what games are played, and hope that you develop enough trust with them that where they will then believe you and trust you so you can help take care of them. So that's really where this came from. So what I did is I put together a list of 10 questions. And when people would call me, potential clients, I had great relationships with realtors, builders, business owners, and those who, when they would hear someone was looking for a mortgage, then they would refer them to me. And I would start with saying, can I first give you the 10 questions to ask, because I'm assuming you are going to be talking to more people than just myself. And I want to make sure that you are getting the answers to the same questions, because how you ask them makes a difference. That's really the genesis of the 10 questions.
Absolutely right. Well, one thing before Randell gets into the questions, one thing I want to ask our viewers to do is, if you have not already subscribed to the Thrive Mortgage YouTube channel, we invite you to click that subscribe button down below and hit that little jingle bell over there on the side, and so you get notified as to when we've got another great video dropping for you. So Randell, let's get into those 10 questions, and where do you think that most consumers should start? Because coming into this, especially for first-time homeowners, a lot of times they just don't know what they don't know. And I mean, they're kind of at that stage. So where should they start with their questions?
Well, let's just talk about the obvious, because what we know is that the first question someone asks when they call is, what is your rate? Mm-hmm. And I would always respond with, then, do you want a real rate or a quoted rate? Because I had to stop and get their attention for a moment. And some people would say, well, just give me your rate. Well, the reality is there are literally hundreds and thousands of ways to put a loan program together. And a lender like us, who has so many different programs, not just a 15-year, not just a 20-year, not just a 30-year, not just a fixed, not just an ARM, not just a government. There are so many different products out there. And our job is to make sure that we're getting you in the right product. And it's no different than if I am someone who goes in the doctor's office and I say, give me a prescription. If the doctor just gave me a prescription, I would want to run. He or she should first say, well, let's find out what the problem is. And that's basically what we have to do, and a good lender is going to make sure that they are fully understanding what you're looking to do, what you're looking to accomplish, because it's not just about rate. And that's not some coy way of saying, oh, don't look for the lowest rate. There are lower rates with higher costs. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
And so the very first question is just simply, what rate can I lock in right now? And will that ever change over the life of the loan? So if there's one question you can remember, please add in there right now. Why? Because one of the games that occurs out there is if you call around just shopping a company before you even look for homes, which that's what happens most often today. 92% of borrowers are actually doing a lot of research before even talking to a realtor. But the problem is that there's loan officers that will just give you a super low rate, knowing that they don't even have to honor it right now.
Right.
What they instead are doing is just trying to get your attention, get your commitment, get your information, knowing that then they've got you, because rates do change. Rates change literally. They can change every minute. It's like the stock market and trying to catch a particular stock price.
Right.
So it moves, and people who can educate about that are going to help. So that's the number one thing. There are other questions, and there's important questions, but if you remember that, then you're going to right away potentially save some disappointment later on when you find out that you're not dealing with someone who has the best overall value for you. And can I go back to that statement I said earlier too, where if 92% of buyers are doing activities before they even talk to an agent, please be cautious, because what we understand from a Zillow research that was done is that borrowers are doing that because they don't want to be scammed and they don't want to talk on the phone.
Right.
Now you realize right then and there, so much of the scamming can occur when you're not actually talking with someone. So please be cautious about that. Certainly, I'm probably a little old school. I still like to meet with people face to face, but I get that a lot of people don't do business like that anymore. So yes, we're a high-tech company. We make it very easy. Convenience is the number one thing that people are looking for, and we can make it very convenient. But it's like a doctor as well. We see the teledoc options now, and you can do it over your phone. At least there's video there, but make sure that you're getting to know someone and that it's someone that you can trust. So that's the first question.
And one of the things that I think is very important to catch out of what you said is that the question that you're asking is you're not expecting a direct response with a number. Like to your point, if they're answering that question without asking you clarifying questions, that's when you hold on to your pocketbook. But what you're doing as the consumer is you're setting up that opportunity to find out exactly what kind of professional you're dealing with.
Exactly. And in fact, if they quote you a rate right away when you answer that question, it's somebody that you probably shouldn't be working with, quite honestly, because again, there's so many questions that we need to ask to do our job. Consultation is really critical in our business to help make sure that you're taken care of. If you're only going to be in the property potentially 3 years, as an example, we can make sure you get the best value for that 3 years. If you're looking for a situation like I've got a large family and I've had a lot of kids going to college, so I have to set up my budget a little bit differently. And if we know that there are significant expenses coming in the future, we can set you up for advantages so that your cash flow works appropriately. And that's one of the other jobs that we do. So the second question is, will I be paying any points or fees to get this rate that you're quoting me? Why? Because there's always costs. Just know that there are always costs. If someone says, oh, there are no fees, again, that's someone that you're going to want to move away from, because there are always costs. That's the reality of this business. And so it's whether you're going to add it in somewhere else or have some potentially hidden fees. The new disclosures that have come since Dodd-Frank legislation came in help with making sure that you can do more of a side-by-side comparison. So that is a good thing. So I don't want to scare anyone by any means. But my point is just simply, if you're making decisions based on verbal answers, or just when you're emailing someone back and forth or texting them through some of these chat boxes, those are the things to be worried about.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's question number 3?
So question number 3 is, what will be my down payment requirement and total amount needed? Now, why is that? Because rates are complicated.
Sure.
It's based today on credit score, down payment, a number of circumstances, the product type. So many times what people are doing is when they're quoting a rate without really asking any questions. They're going to give you the absolute best rate possible, which often means they're assuming that you're going to put 20% down. They're assuming that you have a 780 FICO score, as an example, and other characteristics
Right.
that can make a difference. And so by allowing that professional to ask you questions, they can make sure that the rate that they are giving you is a real rate, not a quoted rate. So
Right.
again, if all you're doing and you say, wow, I talked to 3 other people and that rate was different, that's because they weren't asking some of those details. If you're car shopping and you find out, you're saying, boy, this car is cheaper than the other one. Well, maybe it's a 6-cylinder, not an 8-cylinder. Maybe it's all-wheel drive versus 2-wheel drive, as an example.
Right.
And those are specifics that you need to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I mean, you and I both know this. And those of you who've been watching this, you've heard me say this, there are literally dozens of variables that go into pricing every single loan program, and everybody's financial situation is unique. So there's going to be a lot of things that are coming into play every single time.
Exactly. And so let me simplify it again. First question being, what's the rate right now I can lock in? Are there points and fees associated with this rate? And what's the total amount needed? So those are the 3 things that you want to make sure that you're asking right up front.
Right.
Number 4?
How about number 4?
All right, number 4. Now, I like this one personally because it really does challenge somebody about their integrity. And that is to ask the question, are there any loan programs that you think would be better for me that you don't offer? And why is that? Because as a salesperson, it's hard to ever see your client go someplace else. But maybe I'm simple, and this is what we want our consultants to do here at Thrive, is to make sure that they're looking out for your best interest. Ultimately, what we all know, for those who are seasoned in any kind of opportunity to work with clients and earn their business, the more you're taken care of, the more successful ultimately we will be. So by asking that question, we have a lot of different programs, but there are companies that have very limited types of products. Again, using the example of going to a doctor's office, there may be a specialty that you need to see, not that general physician. And a really good one is going to make sure you go to a specialty to get the best possible diagnosis. That's what we want to do. And I remember early on in my career, there was a local bank that had a particular first-time homebuyer program that was very unique, and it was only for a short time, and they had limited funds to offer it. Right. But I knew that my borrower in this particular situation, or my client in this case, could benefit from this particular opportunity. So I took that information, handed them back the application, and said, here's who you want to talk to, because they do have a program that's going to benefit you today. They were a little shocked, but you know, the really cool thing was I earned that trust and confidence, and I worked with other family members and partners as a result of that. So it did ultimately, it was the right thing to do. And so that's the question is, are there any programs that you do not offer that would benefit me? Ask that question, and you might be surprised. Someone who is willing to have you go someplace else to be taken care of, that's someone you want to make sure you're working with and referring other people to.
Yeah, because you never know. Maybe there will be a time in the future where after you establish that trust, you as the client, you as the borrower you're going to remember that. You're going to remember when somebody said, look, I could put you in something that we've got right now, but a better solution for you, the program that you're referencing. I have a colleague over at another office who would be able to serve you better. But you're going to remember that person down the road. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Great
fact,
advice.
And the next question is really similar to that, by the way, and that is to ask the question, what qualifications do you have that mean you're the best person to help me in this particular experience? Again, it's one of those opportunities, because you want to make sure you're being taken care of. It's no different than going back to the doctor again, and that illustration, finding out what are their qualifications. If you have a specific need that they may not have an expertise in, then let that opportunity to unfold and have part of the conversation. Right. I like to ask that question. Sometimes people don't know what I do. And as I'm talking to folks, I happen to be in a car riding service, and someone mentioned that they also did loans, as a matter of fact, while they were driving me from the airport to my destination. And they said if I never needed assistance, to let them know. So I asked this question, what qualifications do you have? And the person literally said, well, because I know somebody who's going to help with this. Then they told me that they can get a great rate for you. So that it makes me want to cringe as a professional in this industry that wants to make sure people are taken care of, because the more that trust is gained, the more opportunities we have to work with people. And so ask that question, what qualifications do you have that's going to benefit me, and find out how they answer that question for you.
Absolutely. So in the interest of time, I know that we've got 4 more questions to go through. Um, those 4 questions can, we'll go through each of them, but just so all of you folks know, so you don't have to go back and rewatch this video like 10 times to write down every single one of the questions. I'll pop the 10 questions down in the description below at the conclusion of this. But so let's look at number 7, and what's important about the 7th question.
7th question is, who will I talk to throughout the loan process? That's important as well, because I know when I bought my first home, I was not in the business.
Right.
And I remember I was developing this relationship. I liked this person, but then I never talked to him again after I started the process. I didn't know that. It made me feel a little awkward. All of a sudden, other people are calling me. And that was one of the reasons I was compelled to get into this business, because I thought, I know I can provide a better experience than I was given. So that's why it's important to ask them. It's okay. Some of the best loan consultants out there in our business will have a team that specialize in certain aspects, but it's important that you are aware of who you're going to be talking to. Number one, so you can be taking care of them. And secondly, one of the things that's proliferated since I've been in the business is all the fraud that does occur.
Right.
And it's not uncommon for someone to be starting this process. Then they get an email from someone who says, hey, I need your W-2s and pay stubs again. And what they don't know is that that is a potential scam.
Right.
And so you need to know who you're dealing with, and it's important to ask that question. The next question then kind of goes to that, and I think is important as well, if I can throw this in, and that is to ask them, who is their manager?
There you go.
And what is their phone number, and how can you reach them? And why is that? Because if you're not being taken care of at all in the process the way that you believe you should be, then you need to know who it is that you can call or contact in order to have a conversation with them. This has to go to trust and confidence about the process. This is a lot of confidential information, and people are often concerned about it, and I get that. And that's why the more that you know you're dealing with someone that can be trusted, and someone who has a local manager, someone that's working with them that you can reach out to, is going to give you more confidence.
Absolutely. So question number 8. Oh, that was 8. So 9.
Yeah. Who has the authority to approve my loan? This is where you start to find out, are you working with a middle person or not? When you ask that question, who has the authority to approve my loan? If you're dealing with someone that's a middle line person and it's not their company, that's pretty common, sadly enough, in this business. About 95% of lenders that are out there, specifically talking about independent mortgage banks, that's what we are.
Right.
Only about 5%, a little less than that, actually go directly to what we call the agencies, Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie. And all that means is that's ultimately where loans go in the end. And so we have our own underwriters, we have our own processors. We're the ones that are approving that loan. It's our name associated with it, and our risk, and ultimately our reputation. That's different than some companies out there where they may originate the loan, but they have to go through another company in order to provide the underwriting for that process. That'd be another good show, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
what does an
absolutely.
underwriter do? Who is that person, kind of thing? But it's important that you know that, especially because if they're dealing with another company that may be 10 days in underwriting, as an example, and you're needing to close quick, or you've got a deadline, especially in the holidays right now, and people are expecting to move at certain times while they're off work, then you need to know who's able to control that. At our company, we're able to control what that opportunity is from a timeline standpoint for the underwriter in that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And ultimately, I love this one. And it's about closing on time and asking the question, how can I be certain I will close on time? It's a very important question to ask in our business. It's important to know who has control of that, as I already mentioned, but asking them to give you confidence about that. Now, here should be the question back that a good consultant is going to ask you, and that is, will you be prompt in getting me the documentation I need so that I can make sure I deliver on that? Sometimes it's hard for people to say that, but a good one is going to ask you those questions, because so much of our timeline, literally it's a matter of a few days that we can do everything from the beginning to the end. What is usually the longest process is getting documentation that might be asked for from the consumer, from our client. We get it that people are often saying, this doesn't make any sense. Why do you need all my pages of bank statements? Why do you need all the documents from a previous closing or proof of funds and so on? Just know that we don't like to have to ask those questions.
We don't.
Those are what investors require. When I say investors, whether you're a bank, whether you're an independent mortgage bank, no matter who you are, these are guidelines that everyone has to follow. And it ultimately does make the loan more successful. And the more successful that the lending process is, meaning you're getting a borrower who this is absolutely their income, absolutely their assets, and the confirmation that they are going to be able to pay on time, the better that our industry does, the lower the rates are because there's less risk involved. So all of us benefit by providing the documentation that's needed.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. It's interesting with those last two, especially with the who has the authority to close my loan. Last week, we had our incoming CEO, Celine Kellum, on the show, and she did a wonderful job just kind of illustrating what our workflow actually looks like. We had an opportunity to talk about e-closings. We had, we basically broke down the whole process. So if you didn't get to catch that video last week, definitely when we're done here, definitely click over and watch that interview that we conducted with Celine, because she did a masterful job. She was the architect of it to begin with. So she did a masterful job laying out that whole process. So,
and I probably needed to say, if some of you were counting, there was only 9. The real first question or the last question, it's important. It doesn't matter where it's at in this. It's just to ask that individual that you're talking to, are you licensed? And is there a place I can come meet you if we have to meet face to face? Again, that question today, some people are not able to go meet face to face. That's okay. So that question may or may not be as important to you, but certainly making sure that it's a licensed loan originator is important. That's a national requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Some fall under federal licensing if they're at a bank, but making sure it's someone who knows what they're doing, is licensed. That's what's important to be able to take care of you.
Absolutely right. Well, Randell, thank you very much for being on today's episode. We'll definitely have you back on, and we'll talk further. We'll probably go a little deeper into some of those questions as well as other topics. But thank you for tuning in and for watching, whether you're watching this live or watching this on the replay. We appreciate you checking us out. And while you're here, like I said at the beginning, please hit that subscribe button down below and click that little bell over on the side so that you get notified the next time we drop another great video and the next time that we go live like this. And we will see you next time. Be looking for the next episode coming next Tuesday, the 29th or 20. What is next Tuesday? Today's the 20th.
Next Tuesday.
That's right. Next Tuesday, 27th at 2 p.m. Central. And
Sunday is Christmas.
Sunday. Well, yeah, but
27th.
Yeah, thank you.
See, I'm just getting excited.
20 plus 7 is 27. So anyway, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time, folks. So y'all have a good one.
Should have known you'd be right. Thank you, everybody.
Don't doubt me, as my wife says.